What is going on, all you beautiful people out there? It is your boy back with another review. Today we have The Conference. Now, this was a movie that I had no idea about. I did not know about it until I hopped on Netflix and saw it in the recently added. And upon reading the premise of it, upon looking at the trailer, I got a lot of Belko Experiment vibes from it. If you guys haven't seen that movie, I believe it came out in like 2016. Belko Experiment was a pretty good movie, and I also got vibes of Slasher, which Slasher was on Netflix at some point. I believe it's on Shudder now, and it's basically like this anthology series where each series, or each season, I should say, there's a different storyline, there's a different slasher, and each season they might have the same actors and actresses rotating, kind of similar to American Horror Story, but each season it's a different slasher, different backstory, different location, completely different thing. I'm assuming it's all taking place in the same universe. Well, I guess not, since there's recurrent actors and actresses, but it gave me vibes of that. If you've seen that, you know what I'm talking about. Also gave me vibes of the Belko Experiment, like I just said. Now, upon watching it, it actually was a pleasant surprise. I actually think this is a really fun movie to watch. Now, I will say a barrier that this movie is going to face is the fact that its native language is Swedish. Now, I'm not saying that to discredit the people of Sweden, not at all, or anybody that speaks Swedish for that matter. But a lot of times when it comes to Netflix originals, they never really pop unless they are American or English speaking, I guess I should say. Japanese, or sometimes you have like the Money Heist situation where a lot of Spanish shows also pop off. You very rarely do you see shows that native languages is something like Swedish really pop and really like blow up. And even though this is not like a fantastic slasher, like something that deserves all the praise in the world, I do think it's going to be a lot more worth what it's going to end up getting. And of course, who knows, the show could movie could go crazy, be everywhere, but it's just unfortunate because I do think that people miss out on a lot of stuff whenever they see the language like this. And obviously voiceovers don't do it justice, and you could do it if you want to. I personally prefer watching things in its native language, but I do understand for some people that can kind of taint their experience. One of my favorite Netflix shows, personally speaking, that I've watched over the past few years was Katla. Some of you guys probably never heard about it because it was a completely different language. I think it was like Polish they were speaking in that show. Phenomenal show, great storyline, great actors, really loved the show. Had a lot of first-time actors too, which was incredible for the work that they were doing. But that show went next to nowhere. Most people probably don't even know that show exists, but it is a Netflix original. It exists on Netflix, probably still. It is a phenomenal show, but people just never gave it the time of day because it wasn't in a popular language that is spoken around by a lot of people. To get into what this movie is about, basically this is like Big Corpo versus the little guy being a slasher. So this company, or a few people that work for this company, they're taking a trip in this town that they're basically renovating. That's kind of like the long and short of it. But what happened was, and this is how you sled up the slasher, what happened was they ended up tearing down one of the people's farms because that they're going to build, like, I don't know, think like IKEA or something, like a big corpo type of thing. And the farmer, upon getting his farm demolished, ended up removing himself from the population. I can't say exactly what he did because this YouTube, and I think when you say that word, they flag your videos, so I'm not going to say it. But he removed himself from the population. I'm sure you can take two and two together and figure out what I mean by that. And the slasher ended up being his son, who found him doing it, and his son is the one that is going on this spree, basically taking revenge from all of the people that are in charge of this whole renovation, the people that are taking this trip. Because it's kind of like, I guess they kind of take it as like a slap in the face, the fact that not only are you tearing down my dad's farm, not only are you basically about to turn this town that we grew up and love into something that it's not and turn it into like this big corporation type of thing, but you're also going to take a trip to celebrate in the same town that you're about to renovate, and you're about to take part in the festivities that we grew up maybe participating in, but now you're about to like completely turn it into something else. So he ends up going on a pretty relentless spree. Now, to get into some of the good, I do believe that the cast seems to be really into the movie. It seems like there was a lot of passion coming from the actors and actresses, which was really fun. It seemed like they were really into this movie. It seems like a lot of them, I don't want to say we're taking it serious because it's like a comedy, and it seems to like, it has like that that campiness that a lot of slashers have, but it definitely seems like a lot of the people that were in this movie were having fun with it, and that was always nice to see. With a slasher movie like this, it makes it a more enjoyable watch, in my opinion, versus people that are trying to treat this like it's I don't know, like it's something that it's not. Another good was the costume of the slasher. I really enjoyed it. I kind of liked how, so the slasher was dressed in like, I don't even know what to call this suit. He was dressed in like this combat type of suit. I don't know. It's like it looked like a combat suit slash a swimming suit. It looked really weird, but he also had like this mascot helmet on, which is plastered everywhere. You look in the poster, you can see the helmet that he was wearing. And what was really creative about it, what I thought was really creative about it, was the fact that he was wearing this helmet, the fact that he was wearing this mascot helmet. There were a lot of instances where he maybe should have died or could have died if he didn't have the helmet on, but because he had the helmet on, there were a lot of moments where he maybe they were going for a stab or he tripped over or something like that, and the helmet literally saved him. So I thought it was kind of funny how they gave him like this huge mascot helmet to wear, but it actually ended up kind of serving its purpose throughout the killing spree, because he actually ended up saving his life a few times just off of wearing the helmet. And I thought that was a really nice little feature that they added. They didn't just give him, they actually made the helmet have a purpose, even though I don't think it was intended for that. Or maybe it was, because he did seem like he was a smart enough slasher, but it was just nice seeing like how the helmet was actually saving his life, even though it kind of, I guess, was used for a little bit of comedic relief, because it's like, this guy's running around killing people with like a mascot helmet on, like what is that? But it actually ended up saving him, so it's kind of like, oh, it's good, and I guess it's kind of bad. Also, the kill cams. And when I say kill cams, when I talk about slasher movies and kill cams, I mean like the deaths and how the slasher chooses to take the people out. I thought they were interesting enough. I am not going to sit here and act like I've seen every slasher movie in the world, but I've seen a decent enough, at least in my opinion, to feel like these kills were pretty creative. And there was one that was like a gimmick, I would say, or it was meant to be funny, where he basically had the sickle and he basically was able to poke it right at the top of some woman's head, and she was like, obviously like bleeding very intensively, but I think she had to have had it in her head for like maybe a few hours, because it happened when it was still fairly dark throughout the movie, and she ended up walking, because once he sticked her initially, she didn't just like fall over. She just started walking and started mumbling, basically making it seem like he hit a part of her brain that just made her just still there, still moving, but it was like her brain was almost like mush at that point. And I loved how like there was a certain moment towards like the end of the movie where she's still walking with that sickle poking out of her head, and it's just like, what? Like it was just like, it was really silly. And of course, if I wanted to really pick it apart, I would say like that just doesn't make any sense. But with slasher movies, I feel like you have to have some level of just not taking it serious, because a lot of these slasher movies, especially ones that also label themselves as comedies, you have to take the fact that there's going to be some deaths or some moments that are meant to be comedic, some moments that are meant to be like, of course this would never happen that way, but it's still funny. And I thought it was funny. Of course, if I didn't think it was funny, I might have been a little bit more critical of it, but I found it funny, so I liked it. But he was getting pretty creative. There was a time where he hung a woman up by a flagpole, and then he also like blew up a car, and it was like fireworks popping like right next to her, and it was kind of like shot in this way where it made it seem like, it was fireworks popping next to this woman that is hanging from the top of the flagpole, which was like really, I guess, metaphorical if you wanted to look at it that way, especially considering that there was a moment where he actually sat on some logs and was like looking at it as he was kind of gathering himself. And it was just funny. And there was also other moments as well. I don't want to describe every single interaction he had with a person, but there were a lot of moments like that where it's like, okay, that was actually kind of cool. That was actually kind of creative, or it's actually kind of interesting that he chose to approach that person that way. Another positive, he was pretty smart. Wasn't the smartest, but he was pretty smart. And I do feel like he was grounded in some sense of reality. He had moments where you could see he was slipping up. He had moments where you could tell he wasn't, I guess, a seasoned killer, which he wasn't. He was a guy that found his father, not there anymore, and he decided to go on this spree. So I do like how they didn't make him like the perfect killer or something like that. They gave him some sense of like reality where he's slipping, he's falling, he's not super clean with his deaths. Like I like how they made it a little bit more realistic for a guy that just went on this new killing spree. He's not like some trained veteran combat mercenary that just knows how to execute everything. Also, with a lot of slasher movies like this, I do love a few uncomfortable moments. I do love when there's moments where you kind of just think to yourself like, I can't really watch that. And there were quite a few. I don't want to say which one specifically, but there were a few where I kind of just was like, Jesus, this is a little tough to watch. And I'm a horror guy. I love horror. I love slasher movies. But there were a few moments where it's like even I was kind of recoiling in my seat. Like one I could say, I guess I can give this one, where a guy basically ran past like this tripwire, but it hit the top of his head. So like his forehead was basically sliced, and it didn't like hit his brain or anything, but it was sliced. And there was a moment where the lady was stitching him up, and they actually show like the two parts, like the top of his forehead and the bottom of his forehead, like pulling apart and then pulling back because she was stitching him. It was like real uncomfortable. There was another moment with him that was also pretty uncomfortable with the same premise with his forehead being sliced open. It was bad. You'll know when you see it, or you'll know exactly the other part that I'm talking about towards the end, where it was also a moment where it's like, like I like they really went there. And I do like those moments, even though it makes me uncomfortable. I can appreciate a slasher movie for giving you uncomfortable moments. I think it's pretty fun. And also speaking towards the end, I like the ending. I do. I actually really enjoyed the ending. I thought the ending, maybe it's because there was a decent mix of good people that didn't make it and bad people that didn't make it, that made me like it. I feel like a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, I'm just not a big fan of when either everybody dies or like only the bad people die. Like I don't like that. I feel like having a nice little mixture like this makes it a bit more realistic. It doesn't feel movie like. Where it's like, of course, all the bad guys die, or of course, everybody dies. I do like how overall his kills outweighed the people that lived, but it still was a decent amount of people that were still alive, where it's like, okay, that makes sense. It wasn't like the last person standing or something like that. And it was actually intriguing to see the people that actually ended up living. And also, I think his death was handled pretty well as far as how they took him out. I thought it was actually done pretty well. And not that it came out of nowhere. I could kind of tell, you get to a certain part of the movie where you knew he wasn't gonna like kill them all, but I still think the way they handled him getting taken out, I thought was also done pretty well. Now moving on to the bad, because obviously, this movie isn't perfect. Some of the characters were a bit too stupid for my liking. I get it, it's a slasher movie. Part of what makes slasher movies great is having characters that just are unbelievably stupid, and we're supposed to just yell at the screen and be like, why are you doing that? But there were certain times where I was just like, really? Like, that's what you chose to do? Like the guy that ran into the tripwire that split his forehead open. The tripwire was like silver, and it was like, and it was shown to be pretty shiny, and it was dark out, and it was moonlight, and when the scene happens, you'll know what I mean when I say like there's no possible way he did not see that tripwire. Of course he was getting chased, so it's like his mind wasn't even working right at that point, but like to run headfirst into like a trip, it just was like, I get it. It sounds like, of course you would say that if you were getting chased by somebody, who knows what you would have done. But it's like, I don't know, man. I just feel like in moments like that, you could just duck your head, because literally the person right behind him ducked, which also leads me to believe that he definitely saw that tripwire. But there were a few moments like that. I don't want to really criticize how the older people were reacting to him, because they were older. There was like this woman where anytime she did anything physical, she just started screaming to the top of her lungs, and it's like, she's older, so I guess I'll cut her some slack. But it still was kind of like, oh my god, like it was bad. But yeah, some of the characters were just a little bit too stupid. Also, just the reveal, because they didn't announce it very early on, the reveal that the person that was going on this killing spree was the farmer's whose barn got demolished son, who found him and decided to, take revenge. It didn't really hit for me. It didn't hit for me. Like, part of a slasher movie for me, as far as like seeing how good it is finding out who the slasher is, especially considering that at no point in the movie do we get a full face shot of the actual killer. We just know it's the farmer's son. We never actually get a good look at him, ever. We see him from the side. We see him through the eye of the mascot helmet thing, because towards the end it had like a rip in it, but we never got a good face look at the son. And it just the reveal that it was the son itself, I just think it was set up poorly. And it was something where it's like, you didn't see it coming, and they didn't bring it up till like the very end. So it wasn't like it was something where it's like, oh, it was there the whole time. They never brung up the fact that the farmer who had his house demolished, because they brung that up pretty early. They never brung up that he had a son. They never did. And so it was never something where it was like, oh wow, of course it was the sun. They never told us that there was a sun to begin with. So when they revealed that it was the sun, I don't think it hit at the rate that they thought it would. It just kind of just it just didn't really hit for me. Also, lastly, even though like I said, in the good, the cast seemed like they were pretty into the movie. I didn't really care for them, the good ones or the bad ones. I wasn't in a situation where like I hope the bad ones got taken out, or I was in a situation where it's like I hope the good ones survive. Except for the one guy. There's this one guy who had a scene with a woman, and I don't even want to describe it because I don't even know if I can on YouTube. But there was a moment where the guy was having this conversation with a woman, and it was in his room, and he did something that was a little like off the wall, like what? And at that point, it was like, yeah, I'm good off of him. I'm good off of him. But even like the girl that was, I guess, the pseudo main character that was like, sick, and she got her signature forged, and she wasn't even supposed to be here, and they were trying to build her up to be like the only person with a good moral compass, or one of the few with a good moral compass. Even somebody like her was like, I don't really care if she dies. And of course she ends up making it towards the end, but it still was something where it's like I just didn't really care for the characters that died or lived, or like just none of the characters. I didn't have any emotional weight with them. And of course it's like, well, it's just a movie that's only like an hour and some change. Usually with stuff like that, it has to build up over a couple of episodes of a show. But there are plenty of other slasher movies that I only watched in one sitting, and it was only one singular movie, and I was hoping they were going to make it. I was hoping they were going to die. And this one just didn't really have any characters like that for me. Of course, part of it could be maybe because they were speaking in Swedish the whole time. So maybe a lot of jokes and cute moments that they had maybe didn't really hit like that for me. That would have made me grown a little bit more attached to them, because like, oh, they're a funny person, or oh, they're a nice little person. None of that really hit for me. So I overall didn't really care about any of the characters and what happened to any of them. So overall, I do like the movie. I definitely want to reiterate that I do enjoy the movie. I think it is a fine movie. I think it's a pretty good slasher movie. I do think it's a movie that maybe if you're into slashers, I think you'll like it. Like I said, there were creative enough kill cams to I think it'll be worth the watch. The plot itself is pretty lackluster, but most slasher films, their plots are pretty lackluster. Usually the plots are just there just to set up why all of these people are gathered to have the slasher take them out. That's usually the only purpose that they usually serve, unless they're going across multiple movies and stuff like that, like the Scream franchise or something like that. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good slasher movie. But slasher movies, a lot of times, it's like you cover one of your eyes and you just look at 5 or 6 of them. You can't really tell the difference. I don't know why you would have to cover your eyes and not be able to tell. That didn't make any sense. Grade rating, I am going to give this a B. Yeah, I'm going to give it a B. Solid B. Strong B. Really good slasher movie. A slasher movie that I wouldn't mind coming back to at some point. I wouldn't mind watching it again. I think it's a good movie you could turn on with your family. It's not one of those slasher movies that are like super overly sexualized. There's only like one scene where it's a bit uncomfortable, which is the scene I was talking about between a guy and a girl, but it wasn't like uncomfortable in a sexual way. It was uncomfortable as in like, I can't believe he just did that way. So you do have that going for it as well. It is a movie that you can watch with friends. You can watch by yourself. You can watch with family. And most slasher movies have at least 1 or 2 scenes where it's like, oh, this is a bit too sexual to watch with my family. This one does not have that. Also, for the comedy, for it to be labeled a comedy, it was only maybe like one part that I like actually laughed at, and it was when a guy, he had gotten a chainsaw put to his ear, so like his ear was like not functional, and of course he had another ear, but of course you lose one ear, it's going to be kind of hard for you to hear, period. And the girl was asking him like, are you ready? And he was like, wait, what? And then he was like say it again, and she like kept repeating it like, are you good? And he's like, wait, what? And then he finally, I guess, understood what she said, and she said, oh yeah, I'm good. And they just kept talking, and they just kept going along like it was like a normal conversation. I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, that was the only part that I genuinely laughed at, or outside of when the chick was still walking with the sickle in her head. But that was more of like a dark humor, I'm a sick human being type of joke. But I feel like they put it in there for people like me with sick humor to laugh at it anyway. So that is going to do it for review until Monday, which is when my next video will come out. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Hope you guys are doing fun things. I'm not, but hope you guys are. And yeah, until my next one, remember to eat your veggies.